European leaders are gathering in Brussels for a summit aimed at agreeing on a massive loan to cover Ukraine's costs, military and otherwise, for the next 2 years. Leaders are set to press for tens of billions of euros in frozen Russian assets held in Europe to be used to fund Ukraine. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she won't leave the summit unless a deal is in place. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk warned that Europe faced a choice of paying money today or blood tomorrow. But not all EU members are on board with using Russian money to fund Ukraine's defense. Belgium, where most of Moscow's frozen assets are, has criticized the plan. Prime Minister Bart de Wever says the loan proposal is unprecedented and carries massive legal and financial risks. DW's Christine Mundwa has more.
Roughly 300 billion euros of Russia's central bank reserves are frozen around the world. Most of that money is held by Euroclear, a financial depository based in the Belgian capital, Brussels. Euroclear has been reinvesting these assets, making billions in profits. The EU has been sending those profits to Ukraine. But the principle hasn't been touched, because seizing sovereign assets is illegal under international law. But nearly 4 years into Russia's full-scale war, EU countries are struggling to keep funding Ukraine with their national budgets. Brussels' plan to use Russia's frozen assets to make a so-called reparations loan for Ukraine would see the Commission borrow cash balances from EU financial institutions holding immobilized Russian central bank assets. The Commission will then loan the money to Ukraine. The initial amount planned is 90 billion euros, but the loan can go up to 210 billion euros. As a safeguard for Euroclear and other institutions exposed to risk, EU governments will guarantee the loans to Ukraine, meaning they will have to step up and provide the money if Russia were to win a legal challenge. The EU maintains its proposal is not a confiscation of Russia's assets. Officials in Brussels say Moscow's claim on the money doesn't change. The EU's plan is based on a paper authored by this British campaigner.
Under international law, Russia owes war damages, also known as reparations, to Ukraine for its illegal invasion. I came up with the idea of a loan. And the core idea behind this loan is it's a loan that Ukraine only has to repay if Russia pays it war reparations.
Russia's central bank assets are frozen under sanctions the EU imposed on Moscow for invading Ukraine. These sanctions have to be renewed every 6 months. The EU has now frozen Russia's central bank assets indefinitely to get around Russia-friendly governments in the bloc that may support Moscow getting its money back. Using a special emergency procedure, the EU has blocked the assets until Russia compensates Ukraine for the damage caused during the war.
And Christine Mundwa joins us now live from Brussels. Christine, lay it out for us. What's at stake at this meeting?
Well, Michael, in short, Ukraine will run out of funding in the first quarter of 2026, that is in March. And after that, if no new money flows to Ukraine, the message that we've gotten from EU leaders is that Ukraine would be forced to capitulate. So such is the urgency of this matter. This is why this meeting is so high stakes. It is why we've heard a number of leaders, as they've made their way in here, alluding to the fact that this is going to be a very long, intense meeting, and that they've got to come out of this with a decision, because not only Ukraine's future is at stake, but potentially Europe's future is at stake in that scenario. For example, if Ukraine were forced to capitulate, and the implications that that has. It's also a moment where the European Union has to show decisiveness. You've had the US president talk about the weakness of the European Union, how leaders speak, but they don't produce anything concrete. So a lot is at stake about what this group of leaders will signal to its ally, Ukraine, but to the world. But have a listen to just some remarks that have been made by some of the leaders as they've been making their way into this meeting.
We have to touch untouchables like Gazprom, like Novatek, like Lukoil, because only those bold decisions hurts and they make a big impact on Russian economy, which is currently not in very good shape, and you know very well that economy is going down, and we have to put more efforts to make Russia feel the cost and price of its aggression.
Now we have a simple choice: either money today or blood tomorrow. And I am not talking about Ukraine only, I am talking about Europe. And this is our decision to make.
We have to find a solution today. The President of the Council said, and I support him in that, we will not leave the European Council without a solution for the funding for Ukraine for the next 2 years. And the two options, one of them then has to be agreed in the European Council.
So that's just a sense of some of what the leaders are feeling as they're going into that meeting. And I'll tell you, there might be disagreement on what way should be used to fund Ukraine, but there's no disagreement on the moment that this is and the urgency and the decisive and bold leadership that it requires from the European Union.
So it's the multi-million euro question. How likely is it that the EU will agree on using Russian assets to help fund Ukraine?
Well, Michael, I have to be honest, it's looking more and more unlikely. Belgium hasn't moved on its opposition to this plan, and Belgium's really been the country that you've had to get on board before this option has any sense of viability to it. Having said that, there is still the sense that this is Plan A, the most viable option on the table, because the other options, as the EU's foreign policy chief Kai Kallas said ahead of the meeting, have been tried before, right? This is the EU taking joint debt, borrowing collectively, and then giving that money to Ukraine. This is not an option for countries like Germany, and that step requires unanimity. So without everybody being on board, that step is not possible. And so you've had the sense that the Commission, for its part, has thrown its weight behind using the frozen assets. But now it's not just Belgium. A few other countries have come up expressing their opposition to using the frozen assets, or their caution. They're asking for EU member countries to consider other options. Italy is among those countries. And then you have reports from Ukraine that the US is pressuring certain EU governments to drop the frozen assets plan. Now that would be bearing down very strongly in this meeting. So a lot is at stake here. Plan A for the Commission is looking more and more unlikely. Viktor Orban, also the Prime Minister of Hungary, alluded to the fact that it was dead in the water, essentially. So it remains to be seen if within these hours, and we know it's going to be a long one, they can get Belgium's concerns assuaged. Belgium fears retaliation by Russia and all sorts of legal risks, right? And so what you've had in the last few weeks is the Commission putting more safeguards into the initial proposal, safeguards for the financial institutions that are exposed to the risks, safeguards for the Belgian state. Now we wait to see if all of these efforts and the guarantees that other member states have promised will be enough to reassure Belgium and others that this is a viable option.
Clearly, the situation is fraught. Our thanks, as always, to DW's Christine Munwa in Brussels.